Welcome to Retailistic, the official podcast of Coresight Research for March 10th, 2026. This week, our CEO, Deborah Weinswig, speaks with returning guest Rocquan Lucas from Shoptalk to discuss the evolving role of AI in retail and the Shoptalk Spring programming that will explore this vital subject. But before we bring in Deborah and Rocquan, here's a quick preview of some of the research we're publishing for our members this week. We have a CEO brief on the likely impact of the conflict in Iran. We have an analysis of the latest insights from our weekly consumer survey. And both the U.S. CPG sales tracker with updated actuals and our U.S. retail sales outlook for the month ahead. We also have our U.S. and U.K. store openings and closings reports with the latest announcements from the top retailers in each country. This week, we are also kicking off coverage of the Shoptalk Spring event with profiles of each company participating in the annual startup competition. But here are Deborah and Rocquan to talk more about that.
So Rocquan, thank you so much for joining us to really give a preview of what's new and kind of next to Shoptalk this year. I feel like so much has changed and the value for those attending has continued to elevate. So maybe give us the 411, if you will, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So, Deborah, always good to see you and excited to be joining the podcast. So many things that I can share about Shoptalk Spring, but let's start with the basics, right? So the show is going to be taking place March 24th through the 26th. It's going to be in Las Vegas. So we're returning, and this year's show marks our 10th anniversary, if you will, of Shoptalk Spring. While you won't necessarily see a big acknowledgement of it, I think we will be kind of just highlighting the different ways in which the show has kind of evolved. And so that's super exciting. And then, we have some amazing keynotes and speaker roster that's over 180 plus executives. CEO of Wayfair will be joining us, CEO of New Balance, CEO of Victoria's Secret, who will kind of tell stories about how they're driving growth. And this year's theme of Shoptalk Spring is retail in the age of AI. So obviously you can't, go through your LinkedIn feed without seeing different articles related to AI and how it will shape retail. And so we'll definitely explore some of the more kind of obvious ways in which AI is transforming the industry. But we'll also explore some not so obvious areas as well, such as how AI is kind of transforming store operations and other parts of the business. And then we'll also explore, how do you cultivate customers and what's the human element in retail today with the backdrop of AI. So many different things are happening at the show that we're excited about. I could certainly dive in depth into all of that, but I'm really looking forward to bringing the community together in just a few weeks.
I was actually just with the CEO of New Balance in Washington. I was on a call with the CEO of Wayfair the other day. So it'll be interesting because I think that AI is moving so quickly that I'm finding you could even be talking to people every week and what they're doing in their companies is evolving, right? For those who lean into it. And I had a call today with somebody who used to work at one of the largest retailers in the world. I've known for at least a decade. And he was saying that the work that he's doing now, he's basically got 100 people working for him, but it's all AI. And he said, I could never do what I'm doing now without it. And he said, at the funding levels we're at. And so when you start to think about, I think right now, like the advantage is to the private companies. And that's why I think it'll be interesting, like the New Balance versus the Wayfair versus Victoria's Secret, right? Because one you have is founder led, one is private, right? And one is public. And so I think those are three really interesting examples of how different companies are kind of like leaning in because more almost of their heritage than anything else.
Yeah. And I think we always aim to kind of cover different pockets of retail and to kind of reflect the diversity to get those different perspectives. So yeah, definitely always supportive of an approach like that.
No, I think it's actually, I think, very smart because I think what we're finding, because things are changing so rapidly, is that I think at the C-suite level, there is anxiety around what to do and when to do it. So whether it was planned or whether it was kind of by circumstance, but I actually think that the three that you mentioned, I think it's actually a very good almost roadmap for people to see those three kind of speakers, right, like at one event, because it'll really start to help people identify, right, like this is what our company looks like, and maybe this is what we should be doing or how we should think about this. And that's actually a fascinating, see, it's like sometimes it's better, as my mother always said, it's better to be lucky than good. But it is really interesting. So, and congratulations on the 10 years, maybe the fastest 10 years of my life, because it feels like it was just a few years ago. I was on like the phone with Anil and he's like, we're thinking about this thing called Shoptalk. Would you join me? Blah, blah, right? Like, and look at like the community that's been created. I think that how many people's companies have been changed because of it, right? Because there is this community where you can really lean in and ask for help and ask for assistance. And so I think that brings us to startup pitch, right? Because if we go back to the very beginning, right, we were cutting checks and it was all about the win. And over time, I think that we all realized that the win was just really kind of like making it to the stage. And so maybe you can kind of help us think through where we are now as startup pitch, kind of like how we got here and what does it mean for those who participate?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, we've been doing a startup pitch since virtually the existence of Shop Talk, all with the thinking that we want to be able to highlight technology solutions that are out there that can enable retailers and brands and help them to transform their businesses and prepare for what the future of retail is going to be. And I would say that over time, we've experimented with different ways to kind of highlight companies as a part of the startup pitch program. And where we've landed for this year's show is to really emphasize quality over quantity. So we've received hundreds of different applications from different business solutions, and we of course do research of our own to identify different interesting tech companies that are out there. But we truly wanted to spotlight 10 companies. So I think it aligns with 10 years of Shop Talk as well. So 10 companies that we think are doing some really interesting things. The other kind of evolution of a startup pitch is that what we think is very important is to help our audience kind of understand exactly what they're going to hear whenever they step into a particular session. And so we thought about ways to make that true for startup pitch as well. And so this year's show is going to be divided into two specific groups where we'll have technologies that are reinventing customer experience and technologies that are impacting operational efficiencies. Obviously, there's going to be startups that we would feature that kind of hit in or would belong to both categories, if you will, but we'll have them kind of lean into operational efficiencies if they're a part of that group and customer experience if they're a part of that one. So that's just a little bit of the ways things have evolved so that we can best serve our audience and best spotlight the cream of the crop when it comes to startup technologies.
If you think about it, and it's more and more how I'm personally thinking about things, which is you have this, of course, infused with all the knowledge of AI Council, but are you finding that there's almost this, I'm going to be more productive, right? Greater efficiencies. And so, right, I have cost savings, and there's kind of that bucket. And then there's like the transformation bucket. And so to me, because we've got to simplify, so I'm going to do what I already do, but do it better and faster and cheaper. And then there is, I'm going to really transform the company by going into either new business lines or something along those lines. How do you see it kind of setting up? Because if I think about even just like the two tracks, it almost kind of sets up that way as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as I kind of alluded to, it's never quite just black and white, customer experience solutions solely or operational efficiencies. But I think we are seeing technology companies that are coming to the market that are walking a certain path or headed down those specific routes. And so we thought that it would just be a great way to kind of help our audience find solutions that relate to the outcomes that they're trying to deliver for their organization. So if they're interested in trying to figure out, how they could cut costs or be more efficient, then they should be taking a look at those technology solutions that are assisting with that. If they're thinking about how to transform their business completely or to just reinvent their shopping experience, then we also have technology companies that they should be checking out on that side of things as well. So yeah, just again, all in an effort to really point our audience to where they can see the solutions that are going to best impact their business.
And what's really interesting when you think about that, right? Before we've had like 4 quadrants, right? It's been complex. And if like, and if you think about it from this perspective, so if we have almost, how can you fund AI, right? Like, how can you, I mean, it's just going back to the better lucky than good. How can you fund it? And then how can you take these savings and transform your company? It's simple, but it's actually quite interesting to think about it that way because it almost gives you this opportunity to also give people in your organization, right? Everyone's got different skill sets and different interests. And so, some people might be really interested in fixing what's there, and other people want to create something new, and some want to do both. And so, if we start to kind of think about AI in those buckets, right? I mean, I've started to do a lot more, I'm sending emails to people at 2 in the morning, right? I'm sitting here like coding stuff, and it's because everything is changing every week, really. Things that I couldn't do a week ago, I can do now. And it like almost kind of hurts your brain. I have to, I don't know what that's, it's like when you eat like an ice cream cone and your brain freezes, but different. And this is certainly more enjoyable in a way because you're like, wow. And I think there's something really important here because a lot of people, I'm feeling, we can call it AI fatigue, AI frustration, but I will say I'm personally getting more concerned about that because, hey, right, I'm a research analyst by training, and I just keep on asking why. I have insatiable curiosity, but that's like a very small percentage of the population. I was born saying like, why? Others are kind of like what and how and who. And I think that if everything you did a week ago, you have to kind of like tear down and start again, there is a fatigue, the frustration, but also if you think about it in a corporate environment with governance and compliance, what can I do? Like, what am I allowed to do? And I think that Shoptalk's doing an amazing job of kind of like talking about all these different facets so that when you leave, you're like, okay, I know what I can do. I know how to do it. And I know what I can do kind of like within our corporations, like guardrails really.
Yeah, for sure. As we thought about the entire agenda, one of the things that we're always thinking about is one, how can we support different roles within a retail organization? So, not just e-commerce or digital roles, but how can we provide tactics and takeaways for those who are in store operations and those who are in supply chain as well. And we believe that there are technologies out there that obviously support those businesses, but we want to also create sessions that aren't just on the tech track that support their needs as well. And we know AI is being covered a lot from the perspective of what agentic commerce will look like. But again, we want to definitely explore AI's role and how it will impact store operations. And so we were just having some conversations with some of our speakers as a part of the prep calls. They were excited by the idea that we're not just covering the sexiest parts of AI, but also exploring those other areas where it can be super impactful and valuable for businesses.
Well, I actually think that this is what's interesting is because I think the role of the store has changed, right, or evolved. And it's about community, it's about building your identity, kind of connecting with consumers in a different way, hopefully decreasing returns. That I think that the store has become, and because of a lot of the technology, right? Like the store is now sensing and almost like alive in a way, right? Like, I mean, I think there's this book I read when I was a kid about like how the classroom comes to life, right? Like it's it's kind of that, except there's no fungus involved. And so this idea that your store can kind of be sensing and feeling and helping you learn about your consumer, and then you can ultimately take better care of them online, I think is a really interesting idea. And I think that the challenges are what do you take from the physical store to online and vice versa? I mean, I like the idea of like this unified commerce, but how does the consumer show up differently and what do they need? And then if you can better serve them, what does that mean in terms of your opportunity to capture market share?
Yeah, for sure. Unified commerce is something that we talk about a lot, bridging online and in-store shopping experiences. Then we also spend a lot of time thinking about kind of what the store, the future ultimately will look like. And I think some of the points that you hit on definitely kind of reflect sessions that we'll host at Shoptalk Spring this year, given that we want to be able to discuss the way in which stores can still serve as that human touch and ways for you to build strong customer experiences. And then technology can be layered atop of that to support the associates with helping customers find what they're looking for, or just to help take care of tasks that are a bit more tedious in the store. And then, using technology as a way to just have almost customer facing experiences that are supported in the store as well. So there's so much happening just in the stores alone, and how that's evolving. But of course, it all has to tie back to the growth that is taking place in e-commerce as well. And how do you make those experiences synergistic, which is kind of why I'm excited to hear a lot from the CEO of Wayfair as they kind of make their move into physical stores.
Yeah, I don't even had the chance to see the store in Chicago, but it was interesting. Like Mirrors used to talk about this idea that their kind of core consumer would come to the website at like 1 out of every 2 days for just inspiration, for happiness. And to be able to kind of like think about that and extend that into a store setting is really interesting. And because they've really always been from the very beginning data first and letting data inform their merchandising. And then they have like a very unique model in terms of inventory. And, they've always been very focused on ultimately the numbers. And I mean the numbers as it relates to kind of performance, so ROI driven. And they going into stores at this point versus like there was the kind of rush of many of the other kind of like, digitally native companies, I find fascinating. And it's kind of right. And it goes back to because I think ultimately it's like a data game. What are you learning now about the consumer that you couldn't online? And then how can you better serve them? And how can you work with your wholesalers, your vendors, et cetera, to create the product that your consumers are going to want? And so, I think it's going to be a fascinating story. One question I wanted to ask you is we are increasingly hearing from executives about the challenges of returns. And are you seeing yet kind of what you would have expected in terms of technology to solve that? And if not, why don't you think we're there yet?
Yeah. When it comes to returns, I think that we are seeing technologies that can assist at least with handling and the managing of the returns, and kind of on the reverse logistics side of things. And so we'll be spotlighting different companies kind of on our tech track to address that. And so, yeah, obviously it just continues to be a big pain point. I think as a person who shops, I've been a person who has bought multiple items in different sizes, just so that once I get the item, I can kind of assess what looks best on me. So I've kind of been a victim of that. And, I think the returns, again, as e-commerce continues to grow, will, of course, just be a challenge and maybe a thorn in the side of retailers. And so we are seeing solutions out there that are using AI to better optimize how they get rid of excess inventory, but also how they manage and properly optimize the returns experience.
Well, it's really interesting. I was in Hong Kong in December and I'm there, 6 to 8 times a year. And I decided to stay an extra day, as one does. And Janice Wang at Alvanon is a good friend of mine. And she's like, let me pick you up at your hotel. And, with Janice, what I love is you never know what your day is going to look like. And so we went to the Advanced Manufacturing Center in Hong Kong. And it was one of those truly kind of almost like outer body experiences, because it's something I expected to see like 10 years out, where they're literally taking fabric back down to the thread and able through AI to separate poly and cotton and all of this. And they're growing like hydroponic cotton. I mean, it was truly if everyone, I have a few photos. I don't know if I could have taken a video or not, but it was really amazing. And then we went to her office because I know what she does at a certain level, but like when you're in someone's office, I think this is the benefit of physicality. You just get a totally different sense. And I expected to be there for an hour, right? Like I need to get my bag, go to the airport kind of thing. And I think I was there. I mean, I ended up kind of quite close to the airport. I think I ended up being there for let's just say multiples of an hour. And what was so interesting to me was they've done all this work with Zara that they could share because Zara's shared it, where as companies, more apparel, footwear, maybe accessories, are trying to understand why the return rate is growing. Yes, I think it's more acceptable to return things, right? That's just norms. But it's like there's something else. And so what they found, which was kind of like one of these, it seems simple, but it's not. And when I was at Profit Tech, we kept finding like all of this, like we were just looking at data patterns, right? Like we were ML, big data. we would just see things showing up that we were like, wow, this, like, what does this mean? And then ultimately the retailer's like, oh my gosh, right? So what they found is that on e-commerce, the measurements, right? Because I'm pretty good. I'm like, I want to measure and make sure I get the right size. Those measurements are different than the measurements to manufacture a garment, which are different than the measurements for QA. So a lot of this is probably, and once again, because these teams are probably physically sitting in different places.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things, it's like, it seems so simple, but yet it's not. And so I was just like gobsmacked. Zara saw a 10% decline in return just by getting those, right? Like the same fit model in all 3 channels. And I'm like, that's kind of amazing. And so it was funny. I actually posted something on LinkedIn. They started to go, I don't know why, her brother who works with her decided to do this for dogs. Right. And so like pet ownership has continued to grow, like kind of during the pandemic and beyond. And so I put this very funny. I was traveling, so my husband took the dogs out, and one of them is like a lot longer than the other. And so I ordered, like, I measured them, and I got one like a medium jacket and one a large jacket. Mind you, they're like 8 and 10 pounds, so medium and large is funny at that. Anyways, and one of them you cannot even see the poor thing's head, right? Because like the jacket is so big. And so I said to her, because I was kind of like on the dog thing, I'm like, yeah, sure. And then like and this goes back to when you experience it, now I understand it in a different, and those jackets were like not inexpensive. I returned the one that was like obviously so ridiculously sized, and I did order the new one, but the dog had worn the other one. And so it's, I put that in all the information, right? We followed the guide, but you start to think about like the dog example exponentially and the number of dollars that adds up to. So once again, the return rate over the holiday season was 49%. So once again, I ordered 2 things, I returned one. So out of that, I'm at 50. But this issue or this challenge, this is something that also I think propagates negativity around the industry. And the more that we can, I mean, hey, yes, it kind of drives, right? Like ROI, it is good for the environment, it's good for the consumer. But you start to think about the biggest, like, and I think what's interesting right now, I'm going to tell you what I think is different is that we're leaning into the biggest problems, right? Like we just had this conversation, right? Like this whole conversation about like, because in the past you'd be like, oh yeah, returns are a problem, but listen, I got it. But now instead of that, we're like jumping in with both feet. And I think we're at a real inflection point for the industry because when we're willing to address hard things and difficult things and there's solutions available or we can build it ourselves, right? That's different.
Yeah. I think kind of what I was thinking about as you were sharing is just also, obviously, the more that you can ensure the customer that they're going to indeed get what they want will help, of course, with different things related to returns experience. And so it had me thinking around personalization and the companies that are excelling in that way and in leveraging AI to offer up the right product recommendations to allow people to better see how their goods will look on them. If it's apparel, can certainly help and contribute to addressing what is a big problem in the industry too.
I mean, I have to be honest, I've been thinking, and if someone wants to run with this idea, I'm like, I'm happy to get on phone for 10 years, right? Like I was based in China, right? So we were very active on QR codes. I have never understood. I'm walking by the window in New York. I walk outside a lot, right? I'm like 18,000 steps a day. I walk by a lot of windows and there are a lot of like amazing outfits that are put together that, first of all, you don't know what things cost, right? Because it's not like they have that in the window. I don't know what sizes are available, but if I could take a QR, right? There's a QR code. First of all, I mean, for those of you who know me, I wear like a black suit or a black shirt and jeans, right? Like I'm all about like make it as simple as you can. And if I could use that QR code, see what's in my size, once again, have a size chart or something, and the price, and if I could order the whole outfit, right? I want the top, I want the bottoms, I want the shoes, there's tights, I want the accessories. Think about how that starts to, right? It's true window shopping. And but I gotta tell you, I'm still surprised that there's all these opportunities for commerce or at the airport, right? Like same thing. It can be inside of like a glass box, whatever. But I just feel that like when it comes to inspiration, there are so many opportunities that we don't take advantage of. And to me, that's like my hope, my dream. And then of course that live streaming works at some point, but I think I've given up hope on that for the near term. But I believe that 2026 is the year that I want to say for the next year and a half, I think we're in this kind of like supply chain cycle. And right, I think you've now got the hardware and the software, and that kind of like all aligns. And to me, right, when we're able to exactly what you said, either do kind of like product recommendations or do a better job of telling consumers when their garments are going to arrive. If they're out of stock, we kind of like let them know right away. But I think that loyalty to me is kind of like returns. I mean, supply chain is a whole thing unto itself. But if you think about it, what's good and bad with retail is that you either think about yourself or people you know and how they kind of engage with different retailers. But obviously, we're like ends of one. And so, but I think going back to like over time, what's made me loyal and what hasn't worked, but how little I see companies trying, right? Like how, and I don't know. To me, I will tell you what I'm going to be looking for at Shop Talk is any solution around returns or loyalty, because I think those are game changers in 26. And I think that because AI, there can be the AI fatigue or AI frustration, that those are two areas that the organizations themselves feel that it's right, like it's a controlled test, but it's also something that if it even gets like a little bit better, it could mean something huge internally and externally. So I don't know how you're thinking about loyalty because obviously personalization is a part of that, but it's kind of concentric circles.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. So I think there's a ton of overlap there. When it comes to the technology side of things, we'll be having a few sessions that kind of dive more into kind of like personalization as it relates more so to like the marketing and just better communication that gets us closer and closer to that the one-on-one one-to-one personalization that we think that shoppers will appreciate. Then on the loyalty side, we'll also be discussing different strategies and different things that you can do to better resonate with the shopper. And I think a lot of that sometimes, because loyalty is such a word that can mean a lot of different things, we think that also that includes how you're resonating with the consumer. And some companies are leaning into a nostalgia a lot, and others are thinking about different ways to again resonate with that shopper and make them loyal to the brands.
I mean, have you been into a record store recently?
I
I
haven't.
mean, it is like I went out to Brooklyn and there was like a record drop that I wanted to get. I mean, I was like squishing my way through the crowd. I took photos. I will send them to you actually because I was so amazed. And like, there's like that smell of a record store, right? Like, and I was like, this is because right. I think for those people who are like true aficionados, I mean, I love music, but I played the violin my whole life, so I have a fine-tuned ear, but I wouldn't say like fine-tuned in the way that for me it's like vinyl over digital, but I know a lot of people it is. I just wanted like that physical record. But to me, going back to nostalgia, I think you're absolutely right, right? And so like if you think about like Halloween 25, it was all like the nostalgic like Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles and Phineas and Ferb. And yeah, there's something, what do you think that that's about?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when I think about, nostalgia, it's literally understanding that consumers appreciate reflecting on past memories and when they can kind of like picture themselves in a kind of past time doing these things that made them feel good or made them feel happy. And so I think brands kind of recognize that and think about different ways in which their brands naturally align with some of those kind of like past experiences and past moments. So generally just a way to connect with the shopper in an emotional way. And in addition to a nostalgia session, we'll also be talking about emotional loyalty to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier. And so I think that's just a way to kind of draw that and strengthen that connection in a time where we know that a lot of consumers are being more price conscious and being careful about some of the purchases that they're making, which makes loyalty even more important now.
I can understand what like emotional loyalty. I haven't heard anyone refer to it. See, Rocquan, I always learn from you. Um, but that's a very. Can you like double click on how you look at that or how you think about it?
Yeah, so we're talking about emotional loyalty at Shop Talk Spring, and really it's just meant to spotlight the brands that are out there that are thinking about how they can tap into the shoppers' emotions, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, thinking about different ways in which their brands can help with driving and building moments that are delightful in their lives. And so by kind of fostering that type of connection, it ultimately drives a shopper that wants to return to those stores and return to those brands and drive loyalty.
All right. So we're down to our final 9 minutes. So we're going into our lightning round. So you can pass on any question you don't want to answer, like just, pass, but just think about the first thing that comes off the top of your mind and no profanity. So all right. Well, number one. And these are specific for you. So one retail trend that everyone is talking about you think is overrated.
That is always a tough one. I guess it's hard for me to say overrated, but I think we have to see what truly happens when it comes to agentic commerce and what
Agreed.
how fast it happens. I think is something that we're still trying to figure out and understand, and how it manifests, right? Like when I think of agentic commerce, I'm not just including the experiences that are a part of a AI platform, but I'm also thinking about companies that are building their own shopping assistants as well. And I'm also thinking about how AI can power like commerce better in the store also through agentic solutions. And so I think that in terms of kind of the speed, perhaps depending on who's sharing how fast it's accelerating, I think there could be some overrating in that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we're in March of 26, kind of been talking about this for 6 months, and the only retailer in the app store of ChatGPT is Target. So I, yeah, I would just agree with you. All right, number two, one technology will fundamentally reshape retail operations in the next 5 years.
So I think that's a agentic AI, but it's not necessarily the commerce aspect of things, but just its ability to really allow you to tap data across the organization to be able to action certain things autonomously, or at least semi-autonomously. It just has such huge potential. It can be leveraged by marketers. It can be leveraged by folks in your supply chain. It can be leveraged by your e-commerce leaders. And then, of course, that transitions into AI orchestration and how you kind of get all of these agents to work together, which is going to be kind of the not necessarily roadblock, but things that retailers need to be thinking about. But I see that as being kind of the true thing that can transform these organizations.
It's amazing we got this far without talking about marketing and GEO, but we'll just leave that for like another podcast. But yes, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points. All right, number three, if you could fix one broken process in retail tomorrow, what would it be?
One broken process in retail. So, I mean, I think this conversation has me thinking a lot about the returns experience and what needs to be done to kind of correct that, just because it's such a big challenge. And so, as I think top of my mind, that has to be my answer, I guess.
Number four, what is one thing retailers consistently underestimate about their customers?
I guess, again, related to this conversation, there can be often times where retailers might just take for granted the loyalty that a customer has for their brand. So as long as they're making concerted efforts to just be customer centric and truly embody that, I think they'll be off to a good start. Certainly something that, I can see them kind of underestimating at times. And it's easy to kind of stray away sometimes from truly living that customer centricity, although it can be oftentimes stated by the retailer.
This next one is not an easy one. So physical stores, strategic asset or expensive habit. And if you think about, right, what happened with Saks, and then if we go back, let's call it a decade, when Bill Ackman was trying to convince Target to spin out its real estate into a REIT, is there also kind of a different way for this kind of to all come together? The technical question is physical stores, strategic asset or expensive habit, but there's a lot going on in the background right now, I think.
Yeah. That is a tough one for me.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I actually think it's a really interesting one to double click on. And what's also really interesting is that, like for us at Coresight, right, we're retail consumer facing, but then I would say we double click into supply chain and real estate, right? And if you think about, so we work with all the REITs and, right, yes, they've been acquiring retailers so that, the retailers continue to exist in their malls, blah, blah, blah. But I actually wonder, this is something I've been thinking about, like, at night, is do we see a change in ownership so that retailers can invest more? Like, because at the end of the day, what do retailers do well and what do REITs do well? And I would say retailers should, on the supply chain side, right? Like if they're the best at merchandising and marketing and loyalty and personalization, then retailers should kind of have that domain. And then you start to think about what other domains are there and how that all comes together. So just it late at night what I'm thinking about. But that's a whole other podcast. All right. I love this question. What is the smartest use of AI you have seen in retail so far?
I always am impressed by the various solutions that are out there. Again, kind of on the agentic AI side. And the one that kind of just jumps out to me is the way that it can be leveraged to assist marketing in terms of content creation and accelerating that, how it can be used to kind of create a different ad formats. It seems like it's such an efficiency and productivity booster. And then, of course, there's still that ability to have the human oversight. So it allows for that flexibility where you're able to kind of produce a large swaths of content that would need to align with your brand guidelines. But at the same time, you can kind of still have the proper oversight that you need. So that's the one that's jumping out to me. But I'm sure if you asked me tomorrow, I'd probably share a different solution.
Well, it's funny you say that. So I would say twice this week, I reached out to different organizations, and because the marketing did not seem to be consistent with their brand, and it was more just kind of like almost as like an FYI. I was like, was this? I kind of joked or whatever, like, was this created with like your new AI assistant or whatever? And they responded very quickly on both of them because when you're pumping out so much content, right, it can be difficult for a human to make sure that all the brand guidelines are being followed. And I think that, that is a really tough one. So I know we're at time. We didn't finish our lightning round, so we're going to have you back after Shop Talk. Rocquan, I will say you are one of those people who are amazingly present. And I want to just tell you that in this day and age, that's a real gift that you have. And I always enjoy our time together, but it really is how you kind of think about the questions and really answer them, and just you're here, and I just can't thank you enough. I can't wait to see you in a few weeks. I'm coming in early, so hopefully I can buy you coffee.
Okay. I'm not necessarily biggest coffee drinker, so we can find a tea or something else. You can discuss that, but yeah, no.
Wait, I just have to ask you: have you tried Slate?
I haven't yet.
I'm gonna see. I check my luggage anyways. I'm gonna bring you some. So it's like the leading competitor to Core Power. And so it's got all the protein, but it's like a cleaner drink.
Yeah.
And they have like, I'll send you, they have like cookies and cream I've loved and strawberry and everything. And so it's like my new go-to as I've been trying to like work out more. But yeah, I mean, I think that and I know this is like not, but the beverage category, I mean, is unbelievable in terms of like what's happening. So I'll bring you some of my favorites. I'll let you go. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you in a few weeks. And thanks for taking the time to spend with us.
All right. Sounds good. It's been a pleasure,
Thanks.
Deborah. See you in a few weeks.
Bye.
Thanks, Deborah. And thank you for joining us this week. Coresight Research serves our members with leadership communities, strategy consulting, technology assessment, data resources, seminars, conferences, proprietary research, and more. Visit us at coresight.com to learn about all the ways we can support your success. Have a wonderful week.